Hi, beloved, the children of the Most High. A lot of people ask themselves a question that why does this have to happen? Why does this undesirable incident have to happen to the child of God or to the chosen or to the servant of the Lord? You know, generational curse, it's very dangerous and perilous. Generational curse, beloved, exists. It exists. It existed with Uriah. Uriah is the man who was married to Bathsheba. Bathsheba is the woman who was admired by David when David was walking on the roof and he saw Bathsheba washing, and he developed a lust on that woman. And the reason was because Uriah was a Hittite. A Hittite was a tribe that was cursed because of their evil deeds. They were the Canaanites. The Hittite is the nation that was found by Joshua and the Israelites when they arrived in the promised land. I will go through that. But the bone of contention is, why does this have to be done by a chosen one? And the consequences of the generational curse. Let's look at 2 Samuel verse 16 to 17. People don't understand the reason David took Uriah's wife and colluded for his demise. They don't understand, but I've already said it. This was from three reasons: generational curse, adultery, or humanizing, or stubbornness. I'll come up to that. Let me contemplate on generational curse. When the Israelites, under Joshua's leadership, entered the promised land after 40 years, God instructed his people to destroy the inhabitants of Canaan, to purge the promised land of their pagan practices. Pagan practices are practices that are rituals and beliefs which are blasphemous. So that is not what God wants. God doesn't want that. So he was very upset about those people who occupied Canaan. That's why they had to be killed under the leadership of Joshua. Now you ask yourself a question: why David did that with Uriah's wife? Understandably, God did not want the adultery and deprave religion of groups like the Hittites to infiltrate and influence these people. That's why they had to be killed. Now, listen here. Generation after the great flood, Abraham frequently encountered the Hittites. He purchased the land in order to bury his wife. Remember, Sarah died before Abraham, and Abraham bought the burial site from the Hittites. That is stated in the book of Genesis 23. Now, let's go to the genealogy of the Hittites. His grandson, Esau, also took a wife from the Hittites. Okay? Now, Uriah is a descendant of a group believed to have occupied present Syria and eastern Turkey. Now, the Hittite women, whom their roots go back to the Heth Hittite, the son of Canaan, and the great grandson of Noah. That is the genealogy of the Hittite. Unfortunately, he was betrayed, silenced, and killed to death. That's Uriah, because of the Hittite, where he originated from. Why David killed Uriah? People are themselves that. David didn't just decide to kill Uriah. You must remember, David saw Bathsheba, the wife to Uriah. And David, he asked, "Who is that woman?" And his servant said, "Is Uriah's wife." Then David came up with an instruction. David made an encounter with Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. And Uriah, his character stands in stark contrast to treachery around him. Nevertheless, David was flawed, man, in many ways. Of course, being flawed of the sins of others. David loved women, but the issue was not to kill Uriah. He decided to plan for Uriah, or to collude that Uriah must be taken in front in a war so that he must be killed, because he declined. He reneged the suggestion that after David slept with Bathsheba, and Bathsheba fell pregnant, and David didn't want that to be known that he's the one who impregnated Bathsheba. And then he requested that Uriah must go to his household so that he could meet his wife, Bathsheba, and he declined. He said he wanted to stay there with the king. He stayed with the soldiers who were there with the king. The stubbornness that I mentioned before caused the demise of Uriah. It's not David out of cruelty. It was out of loving women. David was handsome, remember. Solomon, David, Absalom, they were handsome. They were handsome. So they are used to women. They used their handsomeness to interact unnecessarily with women. David saw Bathsheba. Bathsheba was a wife to Uriah. David lusted. He had a lust for Bathsheba. And then he ordered that Bathsheba must come and mate with him. That was out of selfish desire. He was flawed. It was out of selfish desire. Then he impregnated Bathsheba. He impregnated Bathsheba. And he was afraid. He was scared. He was scared because of this adulterous relationship with Bathsheba. Yes, God would forgive David and bless Bathsheba with a son who would eventually inherit his throne. Solomon was a product of David and Bathsheba. Solomon was a great king. He was wise. He was wealthy. Why did God allow that to happen when he was born out of adultery? Why did God allow that? Some of that shows us in some of the incidents, God doesn't take control. God doesn't mind things to happen. Instead, God blessed the very son who was born out of adultery, out of murder, to be the mighty king, the wealthiest king. Mind you, Solomon wealth was worth 3 trillion US dollars in 2026 currency. Solomon was born out of that. Nevertheless, David's sin would impact him and his family for many years. There's another generational curse. Generational curse occurred in Solomon because after Solomon, the throne of Israel was divided into two. One went with Rehoboam and the other one with Jeroboam. Rehoboam was Solomon's son. Jeroboam was ex-Solomon's commander. He was no more Solomon's commander because he revolted. He wanted to dethrone Solomon. And upon hearing, he ran to Egypt. Children of the Most High, understand that God will allow everything to happen, whether good or bad, with a purpose. Here it is, here we find adultery being done, accomplished by David with Bathsheba. Bathsheba was married. She was a wife to somebody, a soldier of David. There was a child that was born out of that adulterous relationship. His name was Solomon, and Solomon became a prominent king of Israel. Not only prominent, he was wealthy, super wealthy, and he was very wise. He was very wise. He had wisdom. He had wisdom that even Queen of Sheba proved, because she heard that was a wise man, and she visited King Solomon in order to test his wisdom that was so popular, so announced. And King Solomon proved to her that his wisdom was above measure. Was above measure. He proved to Queen of Sheba, Solomon, but how was he born? Out of adulterous relationship. God knew about that. But because it was done out of will of a man, as he said, I will allow you freedom to live on earth. I created earth for men to live on. It's up to him. What is it that he wanna do, whether good or bad? Because you must remember, there is heaven and there is hell. Others must go to heaven. The others remaining must go to hell. So God will allow all of this, both of these destinations, to be occupied. They have to be occupied. It all depends on what is it that you choose. Do you choose to go to heaven or do you choose to go to hell? Fix your heart. Talk to your God. Don't be like David, neither like Uriah when he was told to go and mate with his wife Bathsheba after being impregnated by David, because David wanted to conceal what he did. If he accepted, he wouldn't have died. David wouldn't have colluded. That take him, let him be a front man when there is war, so that he must be killed. He must be killed because he doesn't want to understand. When I order him to go to his household, because I want to conceal my evil deeds, my evil actions, children of the Most High, refrain from what caused Bathsheba's death. Refrain. You can't refrain from generational curses there, but refrain from the love of women. Refrain from stubbornness. When you are told, go to your household so that you must mate with your wife. Refrain from the love of women like David. Fix your heart. Don't be too earthly. Don't be too excited to be driven or to be dragged, to be enticed by earthly materials, earthly wishes. Invite divine intervention in your life so that whatever you decide should be blessed, should be sanctioned from the kingdom of heaven, from the boardroom that is above. But that you can do by praying. Pray hard. You'll overcome temptations. Pray hard, my dear brother, my dear sister. You'll conquer the kingdom of darkness, the rulers and the authorities of the kingdom of darkness. I think you heard me. Pray hard. Pray hard. You'll see. You'll break through. All what you want will come to pass, because God is not a false promiser. He's not like God of the priest of Baal. He is God of priest Elijah. Pray hard. Fix your heart and pray hard. Remember, God loves you and I love you. Shalom.